Okay, so again, good day, and today we will be discussing Module 4, which is on consciousness. And in that particular topic, we will be discussing dreams, sleep, hypnosis, and the effect of drugs. So I'm sure that 1.5 hours would not be sufficient to discuss the entire thing, but we will try our best to complete everything as much as possible. If we are unable to complete the discussion, then of course I will be uploading another video, a part 2 video of this lesson. Okay? All right, so these are our learning objectives, beginning from a discussion of what consciousness is and its levels of consciousness down to the different effects of psychoactive drugs. First, let's define consciousness. Now, pag sinabi nating consciousness, it's something that we somehow innately understand, pero kapag pinadefine sa atin, it's something that's a little bit more difficult to define, right? However, if you would remember, itong consciousness na ito is the same consciousness that the pillars of early psychology or psychology as a discipline were very interested in. So consciousness, all right, is a person's awareness of everything that is going on around him or her at any given moment. Basically, consciousness is related to our awareness. All right, so when we are conscious, we are aware of what's going on around us. Alam natin kung nasaan tayo, alam natin kung anong mga functions ang ginagawa natin at any given point in time. Excuse me. And we are aware that our cognitive activities are at its peak. All right? Ito yung time when our cognitive functions are very much active at a normal level. So when we say waking consciousness, we actually have two types of consciousness. We have the first, waking consciousness. So this is the state in which our thoughts, feelings, and sensations are clear, organized, and the person feels alert. This is the time when we are able to think clearly. Ito yung time na kaya nating gumawa ng mga tinatawag nating executive functions, and then we could efficiently assess our cognition or our thought processes, our affect or our emotions, and even our sensory experiences. All right, and alertness is a distinct quality of waking consciousness. When we are awake, okay, or when we are in waking consciousness, then it follows then that we have a normal range or a normal level of alertness. Meanwhile, the second type of consciousness is called altered state of consciousness. This is a state of consciousness wherein mental activity or cognitive activity is significantly different to that of waking consciousness. Now, the question is, when we say waking consciousness, when we say altered state of consciousness, does it follow that we just have a lower level of alertness? Ganun ba siya? The answer is no. All right. If you were able to view Module 4, you will see the comparison that I made. If, for example, we are looking at a bell curve, right? There is a normal range of what waking consciousness encompasses, and that is explained, diba, in the bell curve visual aid doon sa module 4 nyo. Now, anything that goes beyond that, ibig sabihin, anything below that normal range or above that normal range is already an altered state of consciousness. So your altered state of consciousness, or a state wherein your consciousness is altered can actually be will actually make you less alert than normal or more alert than normal. And how exactly does this happen? This happens, say for example, when you are intaking some form of drugs or substance, then it's possible that your consciousness may be lower or higher than normal. Or if you are sleeping and if you are in a state of hypnosis, yan ang mga conditions wherein your consciousness may be altered. But of course, as you may already know, higher levels of alertness could be explained as well nga by substances such as stimulants or narcotics or things like that. Later on, we will be discussing those, but I just want to clarify that because students would have this common misconception that when we say altered state of consciousness, automatically less alert na agad yung tao. It's not like that. Clear? All right, so the first thing we need to discuss is one basic type of altered state of consciousness, which is sleep. All right, the question is, why exactly do we need to sleep? Now, this is a question that's seemingly easy to ask but difficult to answer. And even until today, many researchers are still baffled by our necessity to sleep. They would be proposing certain theories about why we sleep, but then again, more theories are somewhat believable than others. But then again, wala pa rin talagang final answer as to why we need sleep in terms of the psychological sense. So basically, the first thing that we need to remember is that our body follows what we call a circadian rhythm. Circadian coming from circa, which means about, and diem, which means a day. So about a day. Now, this particular circadian rhythm is a bodily rhythm that occurs over a 24-hour period. And our circadian rhythm varies from one person to another. All right? Now, there is a tiny section in the brain, which is called the hypothalamus, that influences the glandular system, particularly the melatonin, right? Because it regulates sleep. All right. Now, the suprachiasmatic nucleus that's found within the hypothalamus actually determines our own internal clock. And this allows us to wake up and to feel sleepy. Now, how does that happen? This particular suprachiasmatic nucleus is the one that allows or tells the pineal gland when to release melatonin so that we will feel sleepy, all right? Or we will continue sleeping, and when to stop or inhibit the release of melatonin, which will make us less sleepy or will wake us up. Now, if you would notice, the hypothalamus and the suprachiasmatic nucleus so far has a lot of psychological functions, and this will be the same throughout the entire semester. Later on, you will realize that there are still other functions that is being regulated by the hypothalamus, and we will be discussing that in our further modules. All right. So before we delve into the different types of sleep or different levels of sleep, let's first understand some concepts about sleep. So the first, All right, we have what we call microsleeps. So microsleeps, these are brief side steps into sleep lasting only a few seconds. Ito yung time na imagine niyo wala pang COVID. Kunyari walang COVID ngayon, maybe some of you would have been riding a jeep or a bus going to Padre Faura, right? And then for some of you na malayo yung tinitirahang bahay, you will be, I think there will be at least one time na makakatulog kayo sa jeep or you will find yourself sleeping or beginning to fall asleep. Tapos alam niyo yung sensation na nakatulog kayo, tapos parang bumabagsak yung ulo nyo, tapos magigising kayo bigla. Tapos makakatulog ulit kayo, tapos babagsak ulit yung ulo nyo. That's actually a microsleep. Yung tipong parang kailangan nyo lang ng masasandalan para makatulog kayo ng mahimbing. Pero alam nyo, kapag nasa jeep kayo, wala kayong masasandalan. Tapos minsan napapasandal kayo din sa balikat ng katabi nyo. Tapos nagigising kayo bigla kapag masyado nang bumababa yung ulo nyo. That's a microsleep. And then, sleep deprivation naman, which I think a lot of us are guilty of, unfortunately, and involuntarily, medyo sleep deprived tayo, I'm sure, is any significant loss in sleep resulting in problems in concentration and irritability. All right, so don't blame other people sometimes kapag irritable kayo sa kanila o kapag hindi kayo makapag-concentrate kapag may kailangan kayong gawin, especially when you're sleep deprived. It's possible that you are a lot irritable than most days or lacking in concentration because you are sleep deprived. So how do you resolve that? Get enough sleep. Okay? Okay, may question, ma'am. Ma-explain po ba ng psychology kung bakit nagigising tayo kapag near nasa babaan natin? Actually, I don't know. Pero feeling ko ako personally, I don't know the explanation kasi ganun din ako. But I think that it has something to do as well with our own body clock, or maybe unconsciously or subconsciously our body knows that there is a specific time kung anong oras tayo bumabiyahe, and then maybe our body automatically regulates, okay, our suprachiasmatic nucleus maybe automatically regulates the particular release of melatonin through the pineal gland over a short period of time. Maybe it has something to do with that. But definitely, our body clock is in the works. Right? Na-try nyo na ba yun? Lumagpas sa bus? Lumagpas sa babaan ng bus. Na-try nyo na ba siya? Just to share, ayan. Sige, may mga nag-share. No, okay. Na-try nyo na ba? Kasi ako, just to briefly share, no, when I was always commuting. Lagi, okay. Oo, di ba? I was always commuting papunta pa uwi when I was in college. And then, I don't know, when I was in college, never akong lumagpas. As in, hindi ko alam kung bakit. I live in Cavite. Never akong lumagpas. Never ako lumalagpas. Pero I think I was already working back then. Lumagpas ako one time, pero hindi masyadong malayo. Siguro kaya pa siyang i-jeep. Lumagpas lang siguro ako mga 2 kilometers, ganyan. Pero that's the farthest na lumagpas ako. I have this colleague. Taga Bacoor siya. Teka lang ha. Anyway, that particular colleague of mine has a funny story to tell when he slept for so long. Anyway, let's continue. All right. This is what I was telling you about earlier. All right, what are the different theories that could explain sleep? Now, you would think that scientists would say or would agree that sleep is something that has to do with replenishing bodily activities or maintaining the functions and the capacity and the efficiency of bodily activities. Pero hindi ganoon ang case because some scientists would not even agree on that. Some of them would support the adaptive theory of sleep, and this particular adaptive theory of sleep would be based on the evolutionary perspective. Basically, sinasabi lang ng adaptive theory of sleep na ito that animals and humans learn to sleep because this is the time when they could avoid predators. Why? Because when you sleep, right, if you are an animal and you see a person or another animal lying down there, you would automatically assume that that particular animal or person is already dead. So you will not hunt them. However, tulog lang pala sila. So kumbaga, it's not so much as a tool as an exercise that people just wanted to do, but it's some sort of adaptation to the harsh environment that we had back then. Okay, so it's amazing that theorists were able to link sleep to the evolutionary perspective. However, could we really say that that's the only motivator? Talagang ganun lang ba ang naging function ng sleep during that time? And this is a reason why the adaptive theory is being highly contested because the primary purpose is really very, very specific, that it doesn't account for any other biological function that the body requires. So, moving forward, another theory was proposed, and this particular theory is the restorative theory of sleep. Now, for me or personally, I believe that this particular theory is more relatable to our current condition because this theory proposes that we need sleep in order to replenish the chemicals and to repair the cellular damages that our body has incurred over the past 24 hours or the past hours that we have been awake or when we are in our waking consciousness. Now, restorative theory is called this way because from the word itself, it restores our bodily function. Kumbaga, sa isang comparable to a game or to a particular application like phone app, nire-restart natin o nire-reboot natin yung system natin every time we are sleeping so that we are functioning at our best when we wake up. And this would be the reason why when we are sleep deprived, we seem to be more irritable and we find it more difficult to concentrate. Kasi nga, hindi nare-replenish yung mga chemicals and hindi nare-repair yung mga cells na dapat ma-repair during the time na natutulog tayo. Kasi nga gising tayo nun. Okay? Now, there are different methods how sleep is being studied or how sleep is being understood. Now, one primary method would be EEG or the electroencephalogram, and EEG allows scientists to see the brainwave activity as a person passes through the various stages of sleep. All right, now it's important for us to remember that there are different waves, EEG waves associated with sleep. We have our alpha waves, we have our theta waves, and we have our delta waves. Now, These waves indicate different levels of sleep as well, such as when alpha waves are being observed in the EEG, it means that that particular person is in a state of relaxation or light sleep. So we could account a very early level or early stage of sleep when we are examining or observing alpha waves. Meanwhile, theta waves is an early stage of sleep, but something that is a little bit deeper than what we observe in alpha waves. So ibig sabihin, it's still an early level or an early stage of sleep, pero it's much heavier na as compared to the earlier level. Okay? And then the delta waves would refer to the deepest stages of sleep. So this is an example. Wait lang ha. Something is wrong with my Zoom again. All right. If you would notice, ayan, so waking consciousness comprises much of our time, right? So this is a 24-hour period, and then we also need a lot of non-REM sleep and then just a few hours of REM sleep. So the total hours of sleep that we have, all right, should be around 8 hours. But as you can see here, some people would sleep for 16 hours. Well, I don't know how that is possible, but I've never experienced that in my life. I don't know if others have experienced it too, but yeah, apparently some people would be able to sleep for 16 hours. Anyway, let's discuss the stages of sleep. Now, let's first subdivide the different stages. So, we have two distinct stages. And under NREM or non-REM sleep, we will have other sub-stages pa. But first, let's discuss the umbrella terms. When we say REM sleep or rapid eye movement, we literally mean to say that during this particular stage, our eyes move rapidly, all right, and the person is typically experiencing a dream. And this is one of the most important stages of sleep. Can anybody think of why? Bakit kaya importante ang REM sleep? Anyone? When we say that REM sleep is associated with dreaming, what could we associate? What else could we associate with dreams? Memories, right? Okay, yan. Sorry, may sumagot. Brain activity, yes. Definitely brain activity and also memory. Definitely brain activity. Kasi wala namang, this is a neurological process naman. Specifically, brain activity, specifically memories, okay? And actually learning. Learning as in academic learning, like as an executive function learning, comprehension, and things that you could actually associate with academic activity. Now, in particular, REM sleep is important for memories because it enables us to build or to maintain our long-term memories, right? And our dreams somehow are an expression of our experiences, either during waking consciousness or some past experience. And of course, as we move forward, we will realize that Sigmund Freud would have a certain interpretation of what the function of a dream is, but we will save that for later. Now, again, remember that REM sleep is important because it allows us to retain, to retain our memories, particularly our long-term memories, and to make sure that all our memories are accurate. And then it's also the stage that enables us to adapt ourselves to activities related to learning. Now, NREM or non-REM sleep is any of the stages that do not include REM. So basically, there are different stages, beginning with stage 1, which includes light sleep. So this is the stage of non-REM sleep where we sometimes see different images. I would not exactly call it images. Parang some sort of, well, it depends from person to person. But we see, hypnagogic images, vivid visual events or elements lang that we see inside our heads. And then sometimes for some people, we have a hypnic jerk. Ito yung minsan mararamdaman nyo na parang biglang nahulog kayo sa kama o parang biglang nalalaglag kayo, tas hindi naman. Tas your body would automatically, react to that. Has anyone experienced that before? It's a common phenomenon. So that's what happens in NREM stage 1. Now, if you, for example, have passed through stage 1, which is light sleep, you will enter into stage 2 already. And these are sleep spindles. So, ito nga yung brief bursts of activity only lasting a second or two. So, this is a transitory event. Okay, a transitory level wherein we transcend from a light sleep moving forward to a deeper level of sleep. And then, of course, our NREM sleep, which are called stages 3 and 4, we will be able to see that the delta waves in the EEG are pronounced, and then we would say that we are in a deep sleep when we observe that more than 50% of the waves in the EEG are in delta waves. So ito yung mga levels of sleep na medyo mahirap nang gisingin yung tao because they're already sleeping deeply. Ayan. So if you would see, this is an example. All right. If you would see here, let's compare an EEG of a person who is awake and an EEG of a person who is awake but relaxed. So, you see maraming activity. And there's a slight variation between a relaxed person's EEG and a person's EEG who is trying to sleep. So, kung mapapansin nyo, medyo, wait, why is it like this? Yeah. Yep, so kung mapapansin nyo, ayan, medyo marami pa ring brain activity sa stage 1, and then the spindles or the activity bursts occur in stage 2. Again, this is a transitory activity. This is the time when the brain starts working, or when the brain starts working towards understanding that the person is trying to sleep, especially when the hormones are being triggered to be released more, and then there's more neural activity as the brain transitions from waking consciousness to altered state of consciousness. And then deep sleep, okay? So kung mapapansin nyo, a deep sleep is already a mixture of delta and theta waves. So kung kunyari, ayan, dito sa side na to, dito, medyo nagdi-dip na siya, right? Nakikita nyo, merong bibilis na brain activity, but at the same time, medyo bumabagal din siya. Unlike here na merong mga sleep spindles, medyo mabibilis na activity. And then, stage 4, talagang medyo mabagal na yung movement ng waves. And these are very big waves as compared to the different types of waves that we have observed earlier. All right, brain activity as well looks like this. So, if we are awake, look, so meron ang daming brain activity, ang daming nangyayari sa brain natin when we are awake. When we are having a light sleep, marami pa ring brain activity, but it's a little bit less as compared to our waking consciousness. But when we are in a deep sleep, there is brain activity, but it's limited to certain functions. Now, of course, this one, the one below, would show cerebral death or if a person is not neurologically functioning anymore. So, kapag patay na siya, so ganyan lang yung makikita natin. Now, just think of it this way. If you are a sleep-deprived person and you haven't slept for 24 hours already, this awake trend here in the EEG is what is occurring in your brain. And you are not giving your brain sufficient time to engage in deep sleep. So just compare kung gaano ka-exhausted yung brain nyo kung magiging awake kayo for so many hours beyond your desirable or ideal waking consciousness, right? Even light sleep, it could help, but it's still not sufficient because you will need deep sleep to replenish everything. Okay? All right. So if you would notice here, all right, if you would notice here, we have a typical sleep cycle for an 8-hour sleep time. So the non-REM sleep occurs the longest, and then the REM sleep occurs about every 90 minutes throughout the night. What does this mean? Ibig sabihin, meron tayong hindi lang isang sleep cycle na nararanasan sa isang gabi. When I say sleep cycle, this is the cycle wherein we engage with stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 of non-REM, proceeding with REM sleep, and then it goes back to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and so on and so forth. Now, how many sleep cycles do we have per night? Okay, it depends from person to person, but usually it's around 5 to 7 cycles. And then the REM period occurs about every 90 minutes throughout the night. All right, so we could, and then the REM stage lasts only for a few minutes. Now, this could actually explain, okay, this could actually explain why some people are very deep sleepers and some people cannot really sleep deep or cannot really sleep deeply. Okay? So, for example, napapansin nyo bakit yung mga matatanda, they usually wake up so early or kapag may narinig lang silang kumalampag, nagigising na sila. Right? It's because, okay, it's because these older persons or older individuals are unable to reach stage 3 and stage 4. So as we grow older, a lot of us would have less release of melatonin or mas paunti na re-release na melatonin. All right, and then as a result, our bodies are unable to have a deeper level of sleep than usual. And it becomes the norm for older people or as you grow older. So, say for example, a person who is 65 years old would perhaps find it difficult to sleep until stage 4 anymore. Perhaps hanggang stage 3 na lang siya at the deepest level. And then, upon reaching stage 3, umuulit na lang sa REM, going to stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, and so on and so forth. So, ganun yung nangyayari. Alright? And that would be the reason why marami sa mga matatanda ang maaga nagigising or napakadaling gisingin. Okay? Now, REM sleep, as I was saying earlier, is associated with learning and memory. And it's also believed to be a paradoxical sleep wherein we engage in a high level of brain activity. Now, studies would show that people who wake up during REM stage would always remember their dream. Napapansin nyo, hindi nyo naaalala yung panaginip nyo usually kapag nagising kayo. But the moment that you wake up in the middle of a dream and naaalala nyo siya, then most likely you are in your REM stage when you were asleep or when you woke up. Ganon siya. Alright? Now, there is a phenomenon called REM rebound. So this refers to an increased amounts of REM sleep after being deprived of REM sleep on earlier nights. Say for example, hindi talaga kayo masyadong mapagkatulog nitong mga nakaraang araw out of anxiety for a particular event in your life or a particular activity. So talagang light sleep lang ang nakukuha nyo. And then when that activity finally ended or that task finally was submitted or completed, you were able to sleep soundly. All right? And then you would notice na mahaba yung napapanaginipan nyo, na parang tuloy-tuloy yung storya nyo ng panaginip nyo kahit na nagising kayo for a little while. When you fell back asleep again, you found yourself again going back to the same dream. Then that is what we call REM rebound. Okay? Now, there are different disorders associated with sleep. Okay? So the first disorders that we will be discussing are related to REM sleep. Okay, please take note. Nightmares, it's a bad dream that occurs during REM sleep. And this is a particular distinction that you may need to remember. So when we say nightmare, it's something that has to do with REM sleep. The nightmares only occur during REM sleep. All right, and this is the reason why sometimes we remember our nightmares very distinctively, because we wake up and then we realize that we are able to remember the dreams that we have, right? And then it still scares us, right? That we have this sort of dream that when we see an actual object related to a nightmare, it somehow makes us fearful or it sometimes scares us. So meanwhile, REM behavior disorder is a rare disorder in which the mechanism that blocks the movement of the voluntary muscle fails, allowing the person to thrash around and even get up and act out nightmares. So REM behavior disorder is actually a disorder associated with bodily movements. So sometimes there's something wrong with our sleep system or neurological system that it limits the movement of our voluntary muscles and just allows us to move uncontrollably and to act out whatever we are thinking of. Now, the key here is to remember that the movement is involuntary. We have no control over what we are doing, nor are we awake enough to know that we are actually acting out something. Now, sleepwalking is also called somnambulism, and it occurs during deep sleep. Okay, it's not during REM, okay? It's during NREM, stage 3 and 4. And this is a particular behavior associated with walking around while sleeping. I'm sure that you are able to, kumbaga, somehow see videos or even watch movies or maybe what else? Videos that would show someone sleepwalking, whether or not it's it's a video clip from a movie or whatnot. So sleepwalking is a common activity that's experienced more by kids rather than by adults. And actually, reports would show that kids around age parang 8 to 10 years old or even younger, like 7, 6 years old, would be sleepwalking more than adults. And scientists and researchers are really trying to find out why this occurrence continues or prevails. So what the question is, what is it with the mental or neurological makeup of these children that allows them to engage in somnambulism more than adults? That's one question that needs further exploration in the field of consciousness. So again, people who sleepwalk do not know that they are sleepwalking. Now, night terrors is similar to nightmares, but then again, the difference is that night terrors occur during non-REM sleep. Now, this is a disorder that allows a person to experience extreme fear and even screams or runs around during deep sleep, without waking fully. So again, it's a rare disorder. However, some people would have night terrors, and this would lead to extreme fear and anxiety. Now, the difference is that people who experience night terrors may not even remember what they're dreaming of, or actually what their fears are during sleep, and then it would make them a little bit more anxious or parang worried for some reason. Ito yung mga instances that they would have these feelings of fear, unexplainable fear or anxiety, and it could be associated as well with some mental health issues. Okay? Now, can sleepwalking be a crime defense? I would leave it up to you to research on these cases, the Kenneth Parks case, Scott Falater case, and the Brian Thomas case, and let me know what you think. Maybe in maybe in some discussion or wherever, I could make some, kumbaga, parang a freedom wall in our class wherein you could write about your insights, and then yeah, we could just do that. So anyway, can sleepwalking be a crime defense? Because some people would report that when they are asleep, they are actually doing some crimes, and these are questions that are still being answered or are trying to be answered even up to this day. Remember, consciousness is a very uh, wide range of topic that's definitely been um, explored, but not in its maximal capacity. Anyway, insomnia, meanwhile, it's the ability to get to sleep, stay asleep, or get a good quality sleep. Now, remember, a person who has insomnia doesn't necessarily hate sleeping or does not want to sleep. Hindi ganoon. A person with insomnia wants to sleep or may want to sleep, pero hindi talaga siya makatulog. Okay, so these are the people who try to sleep for hours, pero talagang they find themselves being awake and not being able to sleep, sometimes for days at a time. Okay, And insomnia could also be related to a good quality of sleep. So people with insomnia may be able to sleep, but it's not the best quality. So maybe light sleep lang, or yung tipong ilang oras lang talaga sila nakatulog and then they wake up again. And this is the reason why they would feel really tired after sleeping or after trying to sleep, because they are not getting the required quality of sleep in order for them to be able to replenish the chemicals and the processes that the body needs. Meanwhile, sleep apnea is a disorder in which the person stops breathing for nearly half a minute or more. And sleep apnea is a very, very dangerous condition because it limits oxygen from being delivered to the brain. Now, this particular condition is very distinct, and this particular condition is characterized by snoring, but snoring at a whole different level, as in snoring na parang as one person with sleep apnea would describe, parang sinasapian yung pag-snore, ganong level, and it drives observers to be a little bit fearful about the condition of the person with sleep apnea. If you know Jokoy, like Jokoy the comedian, there is a skit, there is a video clip on YouTube where he explains how he discovered he had sleep apnea. And then it's funny to watch, but then again, if you would understand each of the symptoms and presentations that he mentioned, then definitely there's you will realize that there's complexity, and it's a very disturbing and scary condition to have. So yun. All right. And then narcolepsy is a condition wherein a person falls immediately into REM sleep during the day without warning. So, hindi rin alam ng tao na may narcolepsy kung kailan siya makakatulog. This is the reason why some of them would just fall to the ground and then sleep. Okay, kahit nasaan pa sila, kahit tatawid sila, kung biglang magkaroon ng neural dysfunction, allowing them to sleep, then they would sleep. Okay, wherever they are, whatever they are doing. All right. And then an associated condition for this would be cataplexy, which is the loss of muscle tone. So this is just a brief overview of the sleep disorders. Ayan. So meron tayong mga hindi discuss, but then again, you could just take a brief look at this and then we could proceed with our next lesson. So dreams, ayan. Now, dreams is very much associated with Sigmund Freud these days, right? People who dream, according to Sigmund Freud, are trying to express their wishes, their unconscious wishes. Now, according to Sigmund Freud, dreams are our windows to the unconscious because our dreams represent the desires that we cannot have, or our hidden desires. And then these hidden desires manifest in a different content. Kasi kapag inilabas natin siya into a raw form, raw as in R-A-W, into a raw form, out into the world, then we will be disrupting our own personal psyche or our own personal peace, because this particular raw dream or raw wish is something that is very anxiety provoking and very damaging to us as people, because it's not really acceptable or morally, ethically, right, psychologically acceptable. All right. Now, the manifest content is the actual dream itself. When we say manifest content or when we say actual dream, it's literally what you dreamed about. Say, for example, you dreamed of or you dreamt of a dog biting a bone. Then the manifest content is what the image you actually saw, the dog biting a bone. So that is the manifest content. Meanwhile, the latent content of the dream is the hidden meaning of that particular dream. So say, for example, what does the dog represent? What does the bone represent? Ayan. According to Sigmund Freud, because Sigmund Freud is always about sex and aggression as the basic human drives. So for him, what motivates us to conduct any specific behavior is our desire for sex and aggression. And when he says sex, it's literally the sex as in sexual intercourse. So according to Freud, yan ang mga drives ng tao. And this is the reason why he would say that sometimes our dreams or sometimes our desires are really not necessarily inappropriate, but somehow unacceptable or very anxiety provoking. Now we have a question here. Let me just look at it. Ma'am, does manifest content explain why we experience deja vu? I don't really can you explain further what you want to ask? So I don't think I am getting the question. So can you please explain it a little bit further? Thank you. So yeah, so that's it. Now, somehow the funny thing about Sigmund Freud is this. He really didn't have a scientific basis for the explanations that he had about dreams. He just utilized his experiences as a psychoanalyst in order to express or explain how dreams work and the meaning of these dreams. Now, usually he would associate like physically long items with phallic desires, such as, for example, in my example, a dog biting a bone. He would say that the latent content of that would be you are the dog and you are biting the bone. It means that you want to have sex or you want to do a specific kind of sexual activity, something like that, because he would say that the bone would represent the phallus or something like that. He would usually link it to that kasi nga the basis of his theory would be that sex and aggression are basic human drives, and that's what motivates us to function in the world, right? Okay. Okay. So, good question. In Freud's definition of dreams, that dreams are a wish fulfillment, does deja vu fall into that category? I don't really think that, well, if we are talking about Freud, then he would say that definitely deja vu would be something that you would associate with an unconscious desire. No, so yes, not necessarily wishful, not necessarily a wish fulfillment per se, pero something that has to do with unresolved issues siguro or unresolved feelings of sex and or aggression, something like that. So something that is motivated by your unconscious. Freud would explain it as that, right? But in terms of consciousness in general, then deja vu would enable us to realize that there are some things that we may notice unconsciously, or we may notice even when we are awake, but not necessarily put too much focus or attention into those things. And maybe those sensory experiences, those sensations come back to us when the experience feels similar again. All right? So that's the general, kumbaga that's the general background. But then again, if we're going to just focus on Freud's perspective, then definitely deja vu would count as something motivated by the unconscious, but necessarily not a wish fulfillment. It may be something that is unresolved, okay, or something that would give us some sort of pleasure, but definitely something stemming from the id or the body's pleasure principle or the unconscious. I hope I was able to answer your question. Anyway, all right, let's focus on dreams. Again, what are the theories that could be associated with dreams? Now, the first theory would be the activation synthesis hypothesis. Now, Freud's theory is also a theory that could be associated with dreams, right? It's Freud's psychoanalytic theory. Pero the problem kasi with Freud's theory is that he's basing his theories, number one, from his personal experiences as a psychoanalyst. Number two, he really didn't propose any empirical method to do things or to, kumbaga, to interpret his theory. The problem with Freud kasi is that he was more about understanding his personal experiences rather than relying on scientific evidence. That was his practice. And if you would notice, or if you would be studying more psychodynamic theorists in the future, you would realize that many contemporary psychodynamic theorists would move away from this particular method that Freud did. And one other problem would be mahirap aralin or mahirap gamitan ng scientific inquiry yung theory ni Freud kasi nga, according to him, wala namang method para ma-access yung unconscious kasi it's buried deep within our personality. So how do we even understand that his tenets are true if we are not even able to get a glimpse of those things, right? Kaya maraming criticisms tong dream interpretation ni Freud. And then, more empirical theories such as the activation synthesis hypothesis would emerge. So this particular theory states that dreams are created by the higher centers of the cortex to explain the activation by the brainstem of cortical cells during sleep period. So kung mapapansin nyo, napaka-neurological ng explanation nila. Basically, what they are saying is that certain areas of the brain, okay, are activated, all right, during REM sleep period. Ganun lang. So these particular areas of the brain that are activated enable us to partake in REM sleep. However, all right, it was revised eventually, and the activation synthesis hypothesis became the activation information mode model, all right, which would entail the association of waking activities to dreams. Kasi kung mapapansin nyo, here, in the activation synthesis hypothesis, ang sinasabi lang natin dito that REM sleep is made available through the activation of certain cells in the brain. However, it doesn't really relate to how the images we see during REM sleep are created. Now, the activation information mode model or the AIM hypothesis would actually explain that by stating that dreams are influenced by our activities during waking consciousness. In particular, these activities that we dream about are more of the activities that we spend so much time thinking on, sometimes even unconsciously thinking of, right? But it's still in our brain. Say, for example, why is it that some people would dream about the things that they reviewed for an exam? Naranasan nyo na ba yun? Napapanaginipan nyo ba yung pinag-aaralan nyo? It has happened to me a lot of times. I don't know about you kung nangyayari sa inyo yun. Some people really dream about those things. Or, for example, if you got into a fight or a significant event during your waking consciousness, some people would also dream about that particular thing. And then sometimes meron pang emotional toll na kasama yun. It would wake us up and make us feel a little bit bad about things, right? Those things. Or kapag masaya yung nangyari, sometimes you also dream about it. And then, minsan you would think that sana totoo na lang yung napanaginipan ko or things like that. Ayan, sometimes I dream about my school requirements. Of course, ako din, pareho tayo. When I was your age, when I was also in college, I always had dreams about my school requirements, especially kapag nag-aaral para sa exam. So I think maybe it's normal. Well, it's normal according to the AIM. Oh my God. Ma'am, yung readings ko, nagiging totoo sila sa dreams. Oh no. Well, maybe, at least you know that you are, the good thing is that you know that you are really trying your best to remember everything, that even in your dreams, lumalabas pa rin sila. Right? Okay, so clear, madali lang naman yung AIM hypothesis, right? Alright, madali lang naman siya. So, yan, let's go to the second type of altered state of consciousness, which is hypnosis. So, this is an altered state of consciousness in which the person is especially susceptible to suggestion. Now, basically, do we say that the person's activity or the person is less alert or more alert during this time? The answer is the person is less alert kasi nga susceptible na sila to suggestion. Now, the thing about hypnosis is that not all people are susceptible to suggestion. Hindi lahat ay kayang i-hypnotize. And as we will be discussing a little bit later on, hypnosis could be used in eliciting bad things such as crimes, or hypnosis could also be used as a therapeutic intervention, like a method by which you would be able to re-examine your sensory experiences through relaxation and susceptibility in order to aid yourself in addressing anxiety in particular or similar psychological conditions. Now, there are four elements involved with hypnosis. So, una sa lahat, ayan, so my gosh, matututo na tayo lahat mag-hypnotize. No, hindi siya ganon. So, actually, there are specified or specialized courses that you need to take if you want to be a hypnotherapist. Actually, even at master's level, hindi rin siya inaaral. So, you have to really take special courses and special classes to be able to utilize hypnotherapy with caution to your clients. Anyway, the four elements of hypnosis would involve, the first one is that the hypnotist tells the person to focus on what is being said, and then the person is told to relax and to feel tired. So there is a conscious activity of allowing the person to feel tired and to relax. And then the hypnotist tells the person to let go and accept suggestions easily. All right. So The fourth stage would be the person is told to use vivid imagination. Now, you would notice that, of course, this particular process or elements is only involved when the person wants to be hypnotized. However, paano kung ayaw niyang ma-hypnotize? That is a question I will not answer because it's one of the questions in your thought paper. So I will not answer that, and then I will leave it at that. So later on, as I release the instructions for the thought paper, that is one of the questions that you may want to answer. But then again, as we go along the course, maybe after the scope of module, after the scope of that particular thought paper 2, then we will answer that. So hypnotic susceptibility. Now, this is the one I was telling you about earlier. Not all people are susceptible to hypnosis. Okay, so there are people who are susceptible, there are people who are not. And we need to understand that this entails certain therapeutic consequences as well, because hypnotherapy would mean that it's not for everyone, right? All right, so, well, we can skip this. This is just some sort of hypnotic susceptibility scale, which I'm sure we will not be able to try din naman. So let's skip this. Ayan, so let's first clarify certain things about hypnosis. Number one, hypnosis can actually create amnesia. Okay, so hypnosis could create amnesia only for the period na na-hypnotize ang tao. So basically, hindi niya pwedeng ipalimot sa'yo yung childhood mo or yung nangyari sa'yo 1 year ago. You may only forget the things you did when you are susceptible or when you were hypnotized. Okay? It can also allow you to relieve pain by allowing the person to remove conscious attention from the pain. And this would be the reason why, again, as I was saying earlier, hypnosis is utilized in therapeutic interventions. Now, it could alter sensory perception, so it could limit you to see things a little bit less clearly, to focus on certain things one at a time, depending on the need of the hypnosis. And then it could also help people relax in situation that would cause them stress. And this is also why we anchor hypnosis as a psychotherapeutic intervention for anxiety-provoking situations. Now, hypnosis cannot give people human strength. Okay, hindi pwedeng kapag na-hypnotize ka, you can now lift a a heavy object, or even an automobile, or kung anumang sasakyan yan o anumang bagay yan. No, it doesn't give you that capacity or capability. It could not reliably enhance memory. All right. It could not regress people back into childhood. And it could not regress people into some past life. Hindi ka pwedeng, ito yung sinasabi natin na hindi pwedeng, actually meron pa ditong related na bagay, no? Hindi ka rin pwedeng umabot dun sa point na sinasapian ka, yung may mga spirits daw na pumapasok sa'yo or anything when you're in a state of hypnosis. It doesn't happen like that. So, yun. So, we stick to the facts about hypnosis, and we would now discuss the theories associated with hypnosis. So the first is hypnosis is a dissociative activity. When we say dissociation, we are talking about the capacity of a person to look at himself or herself as an observer. Para siyang you have one body. Para siyang people would describe it as having a different body and a separate soul. Parang nakikita mo yung ginagawa ng katawan mo from inside, pero wala kang control because you're a different person from your body. It's actually a psychological disorder, right? So, when we say hypnosis is a dissociative activity, all right, and this particular theory of hypnosis would state that a person is actually aware of what's happening inside him or her, but he or she doesn't have control of his or her body. That's how hypnosis is being described as dissociation. Meanwhile, the social cognitive theory of hypnosis would state that people who are hypnotized are not in an altered state but are merely playing the role. So basically, parang nakikisama na lang sila, right? Nakikisama na lang sila sa mga nangyayari. They have conscious awareness of what's going on, but they need to do it for social, kumbaga, for social balance, or they are they are, how do I say this? They are enticed to do it. They may not be able to explain why they are enticed to do it, but they are participating consciously in the process. Because they know that they are conscious while doing it, but the reason why they are doing it is for different reasons. Okay? So, in your discussion post, I asked you if you were agreeing to either of these theory and to explain why. So, ayan. So, if you have ideas about the validity of either theory, then you could express it in our discussion post. Okay? Now, all right. So I will stop the lesson here and then create a new video for psychoactive drugs. So that will be part 2. Now,